give a warm welcome to the hosts of The Bride of Alternate Ending.
Oh gosh, hello ghouls and goblins, and welcome back to Bride of Alternate Ending. That's as far as I could get. I am fresh off of visiting my co-ghost, Tim Brayton, in Wisconsin. I am your ghost, Brennan Klein, and that's as much Wisconsin that rubbed off on me. Hello, Tim. How are you doing?
Oh, is that what that was supposed to be?
That was.
Oh, okay. I was trying to okay.
I don't know. I can't.
We'll have a conversation off mic about some of the things that go into the Midwestern accent.
Yes, I catch people's accents really well in terms of when I'm listening to people talk, or reasonably well. I haven't taken a test, but I cannot replicate anything. I'm no impressionist. I will never get on SNL, and this crushes me.
That is tragically the world will have to live without.
I know
your SNL career that I'm sure would have thrived. No, the big thing is it's going to be a little bit slower than your accent, your natural accent, and you really have to flatten out those vowels. Just take all the affect out of them and just make them nice and flat.
Okay, I will try to internalize that throughout the...
And for Wisconsin specifically, the big thing is, what is the word you use for the plastic or paper, since you're from California, the vessel that your groceries are put into when you go to the grocery store? What is the word you use for that?
A bag?
A bag.
Ah, yes.
That's like the... Not even Wisconsin, really the Milwaukee area, but that's where most Wisconsinites live, so you call it a bag. Groceries in a bag from the grocery store.
Oh, I don't know that I will. I will think about it. When people go on a trip and they come back and they're like, I'm basically from Spain. I should be doing that with Wisconsin.
Like when Americans return to like I don't know, Battle Creek, Michigan or something, and keep talking about how much they enjoyed Ibiza.
Yeah, exactly. Or they have ill-considered braids that they got in Jamaica, or just whatever is the thing.
Yes. Well, I couldn't even get your ass to eat fried cheese curds, so you clearly were not in for the full Wisconsin experience.
And that is not because I refused to. That is just because the opportunity did not present itself. I did have
when Brennan and I were sitting having delicious Wisconsin ice cream, and I brought up cheese curds. Brennan said, I would rather be torn apart by alligators than ever eat one of your fucking cheese curds, Tim. And it hurt me inside my heart.
Yeah, he handed me a basket, and I just took a big shit in it and kicked it into the street.
It was disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, Madison's beautiful. I also went to Toronto, which is fine. I had a good time. Anyway, I'm back. We're here to talk about video nasties. How would you say that in Wisconsin?
Nasties. Video nasties.
Okay. You do it sounds a little New York, like a little bit like a New York gangster from the 20s. Like, oh, we're going to get nasty.
I think you need to watch more 20s movies, man.
I don't know, man. I mean, they're... whatever. Anyway, so I just... Like I said, I can't do it. We've established this. Anyway. So, we're doing Video Nasties because 4th of July is coming up. Independence Day for the United States. It's not a holiday I particularly care about, but it's the one thing you really associate with July unless you're born in July. So, I did think we would... celebrate it in our own way by sticking it to the British, watching movies the British tried to prevent people from seeing as part of the Video Nasties. I was going to say program, but that's not quite right. But there were a bunch of movies that were essentially tried by...
Yeah, basically, so the backstory here is the British Director of Public Prosecutions issued a list of films that were particularly likely to be seen as obscene if the government took a case against him in the court. And this is all because a bunch of videotapes in the early VHS era had been released unrated. The BBFC, the British Board of Film Classification, sort of viewed this as like, how dare they? So basically, a collection of films that were viewed as likely to corrupt the public morality because of the explicitness of their violent content were sort of written up on a list. And this list was the Video Nasties. It's 72 films. There was an addendum of several more films that were never targeted for prosecution, but more just like, if you see these hanging out in a video shop, pick those up when you're picking up the Nasties. But some of the Video Nasties were successfully prosecuted and banned. Some were never taken to court. But there's that core list of 72 films that were like the targets of prosecution, whether they actually got prosecuted or not. And the film we are here to talk about is actually one of the key cornerstones in this period, because it has a cover with such a lurid, disgusting, gory image that just the idea that you would be perusing through whatever your British version of Blockbuster is, I have no idea what they called their rental shops, just seeing this cover pop out at you in the video store, just seeing it would probably turn your child into some sort of like terrible hoodlum who would, I don't know, vote against Thatcher or something like that. But that film is The Driller Killer, and the cover of this film, and its British VHS release, does in fact show a man with a drill entering his skull and blood pouring out of it. So I'm not going to say I support censorship, but I do think not a very tasteful cover.
Certainly.
Maybe would have been better not to have it displayed in publicly available video shops.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So yeah, we nominated 5 movies, all that were successfully prosecuted as part of this process, and either released with heavy cuts, or I believe in the case of The Driller Killer, not released at all for many decades in the UK. I can double check the info on that specific release, but also a lot of the movies that were targeted for Video Nasties, like if you had a really nasty title, that really got you in the jam, as did
yeah, if it had a filthy word in the title like "don't," it would probably get banned.
But also especially any killers using at-home implements or garden tools to kill people, that they really wanted to avoid that, so that people wouldn't come up with any ideas of how to kill their neighbors and so forth.
Yeah, so those kinds of films with "don't" in the title, films that had cannibalism, and Nazis, films that were mostly about like imagining the horrible things that the Nazis did to their prisoners. Those are the 4 big categories, I would say.
Yeah, and
also just some sort of milquetoast, slashers here and there. Like stuff got swept in that is like, sure. Or also the other category was art cinema using a dissolving marriage as a metaphor for the split between the Germanys during the Cold War. Filthy, filthy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone just thought that was disgusting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, this is the Brits we're dealing with. It is a different level of moral strictures we're talking about. But yes, we are here to talk about The Driller Killer. It is, oh boy, and let me double check, but it is the directorial debut of Abel Ferrara, right?
It is the Polite Society directorial debut of Abel Ferrara. He had previously to this worked in pornography, where he did make the feature-length pornography film 9 Lives of a Wet Pussy Cat.
Which is, that's a great title. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent. Yes. So yeah, this is his first like that's not the right word. Not mainstream, but like
it's his first film that you would enjoy watching, I think is maybe one way we could put it.
You as in
I don't know, maybe you'd enjoy you.
Yeah.
As in you.
I mean, look, I have watched feature-length 1970s heterosexual porn for review purposes before, and I will probably do it again. I mean, I watched Wes Craven's the one confirmed feature porn movie that he made as Abe Snake.
Real. That's a good porn director name.
Such a good name. that movie, honestly, it is a blueprint for like everything that he made through the end of the 1980s. It's kind of wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But anyway, so I've done that. I would watch it if I was really digging deep on Abel Ferrara, but I don't know if that's something that intrigues me. The Driller Killer is one of his...
I can tell you that it has been lovingly restored by Vinegar Syndrome and is on Blu-ray. Because why in God's name wouldn't it be?
Yeah. Oh, wait. Oh, the Nine Lives movie?
9 Lives of a Wet
Oh,
Pussy, yeah.
okay. That's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear it. I mean, no movie should be lost. We need to have access.
Agreed.
But yeah, The Driller Killer is kind of one of his cornerstone titles. I believe both you and I are only coming into this movie. Well, you've seen this movie before, but we're both coming into it having only seen one other Abel Ferrara movie. Am I correct in that?
That is correct. For me, that one movie is 1993's Body Snatchers. I'm curious which film that is for you.
It is 1984's Fear City, which I've watched as part of my 1980s slasher project.
It is interesting to me that neither one of us have seen his far more prominent films.
Like Miss 45, perhaps?
Miss 45, Bad Lieutenant, King of New York.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the three. I think those are the big three.
Yeah, well, I think Miss 45, exists on the cult level that the Driller Killer does. But those other two are a little, I don't know, a little more something that someone might have heard of. Like a random person at the grocery store.
I feel like a random person at the grocery store is not likely to have heard of any of them,
yeah.
But point is taken. King of New York, I think, is the one that shows up on real critics' lists.
Yeah, and also, I mean, Bad Lieutenant had that Werner Herzog sequel, right? So that's kind of something.
Yeah.
That's so random. Anyway, so yes, so the one I had seen was Fear City, which honestly, now that I've seen The Driller Killer, it just makes a lot more sense to me what he was doing in Fear City. It has a lot of the same ingredients, implemented in a much less interesting way. But I just watching it, in the milieu of a 1984 slasher, I was like, what the fuck is this? It's just not really anything. But anyway, The Driller Killer, 1979. Are we avoiding talking about The Driller Killer? Is that why we've been rambling a little bit?
No, I think that what we're doing is having a weird, shapeless conversation where whatever thought crosses our mind, we just chase after like a dog on a rabbit. And then we try to get back to a central target, and maybe we get there. Maybe we take a long way to get there. And I think in so doing, we are honoring The Driller Killer.
Yeah, Tim, I wish he was the filler killer, because this movie would have been a lot shorter.
It would have been a lot shorter.
Yeah, so
you wanna grab onto the plot synopsis, or do you want me to have to do it?
I'll try. Okay, so here's the thing. I watched this movie as it was meant to be seen on a plane, because I've been traveling. That was the only opportunity I had.
I will point out, I think that watching this film crammed in next to a bunch of other people very uncomfortably is how this movie was meant to be seen.
Yes, I was going to say that. It kind of really put me in the mindset of the British censorship board, because I was really thinking, are there children around? What scenes do I have to, cover my screen and, really try to periscope in on it?
I was thinking, overcrowded Groundhouse, where everybody's sort of miserable and embarrassed to be there.
Oh, that too.
Beers works too.
It was kind of both. But yes, so I think I am the perfect person to do the plot synopsis. So let's see. Excuse me. The central character of the movie is Reno Miller, played by director Abel Ferrara. I
beg your pardon, he's played by Jimmy Lane.
Ah, yes, Jimmy Lane, the very satisfying pseudonym of Abel Ferrara, who is used to pseudonyms, having directed a porn movie under a different pseudonym.
He sure did.
Quite a few people acted in this movie under pseudonyms. I feel like when directors act in their movie with pseudonyms, it's just to kind of make it seem like more people worked on the movie.
Right.
But other people were like, I don't want to be associated with this. Like the guy who played whatever the punky character's name was, Tony Banana? Was that his name? Am I making that up?
I don't think so. I don't even remember.
Okay.
Let's pull up a cast. While you're trying to work on that, I'll pull up a cast list so we can actually be
okay.
thorough.
Yeah, the characters, the only name I got was Reno, and could internalize in any way. So he is...
Well, the two women were named Pamela and Carol. I could give you that
Okay.
much.
Congrats to them. I did not catch their names. And given how frequently their hair changed and how little they mattered in the plot for the most part, I really couldn't keep them straight. And they weren't straight. They were at least bisexual, probably.
At least.
Yeah. See, that's a thing that carried over into Fear City, in that Abel Ferrara likes to have queer women characters who have relationships with women that primarily service their relationships to men. And it's like, yeah, okay, that does make sense as to what you would want to be doing. Anyway, so Reno is a struggling artist. Not quite so struggling. He has a curator who seems to be like his go-to guy. He thinks he can make money off of his art, presumably because he has a little bit of a background in doing that. But he's working on this, basically his magnum opus. It's a big painting of a buffalo. I actually really like the buffalo painting. What do you think?
I mean, I wouldn't want to own the buffalo painting, but I think that it would be, if it were hanging at my dentist's office, I would be like, wow, dentist, whoever's buying your art has a good eye. Keep that person.
Yeah. No, it's got this kind of like interesting kind of claw mark in the overall canvas that you're looking at. I think it looks kind of neat for a painting of a buffalo.
I will throw this one to you. Which do you think is the more successful artwork? The buffalo painting in Driller Killer, or the various disturbing statues of dead people in A Bucket of Blood?
That is really tough. I was thinking about Bucket of Blood this whole time. It's so similar. In just a totally different, like 20 years later milieu that it's capturing. Oh God. I mean, probably there's so many different factors by which you can judge art. In terms of like putting it in my house, I don't know. I do think the statues in Bucket of Blood are probably better on the whole, especially at evoking the thing that the movie is doing. Because I guess the kind of big slashes on the painting in Driller Killer could like emphasize the way that his mind is fractured or something, but I just don't feel like it really evokes anything specific. I just think it's an interesting piece.
I would agree. And I would say I think the statues get a bigger emotional rise out of me. I think the buffalo is one that I would rather see every day.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like in the fuck, marry, kill equation. Like you would marry the buffalo painting, but it's maybe not necessarily the most alluring.
But I would fuck the statues.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, never mind. I'm not going to say it.
And I would kill the roosters.
The Roosters? Oh, the band. The band
name
from
of
the
the
Driller
punk
Killer.
band.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yes.
I'm furious that he didn't kill the Roosters in this movie.
It's kind of bizarre that he doesn't, because like that's the literal only thing that you could plausibly call the narrative of this film is he wants to kill the roosters.
Yeah.
And yet.
So basically, he's struggling to finish this artwork. He thinks that when he is done, he's going to sell it. He's going to get so much money. They're behind on all their bills. They're living in this like ratty kind of New York slummy apartment. But he's a perfectionist, and it's kind of driving him mad. And what does not help is the punk band, the Roosters, that has moved in downstairs. They're really loudly practicing into the night, just being obnoxious. Like rich kids play acting as bohemians, basically. And as seems only reasonable, he does have a psychotic break and start murdering people with a drill. Although he largely murders homeless people and random people on the street, rather than characters who are in the movie. He starts to target them towards the very, very, very end. And by them, I mean just characters around him that we do know, but never actually the Roosters. Although he kills one.
I would say people whose names.
He kills like one or two of the Roosters, maybe.
I don't recall him doing so.
I feel like
the kills of named characters that I can call to mind are not of the roosters.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm also a little unclear who is in the roosters as part of the problem.
Yeah, it's like a band and they have a posse. It's all very confusing. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say he eventually starts killing characters whose names we know, but apparently we don't necessarily know their names. It was just going to be a snide joke at the film's expense.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, on the subject of character names, you were trying to come up with Tony Coca-Cola.
Ah, yes. That makes more sense.
He that is the name of the lead of the Roosters, played by Douglas Metro, who is working under the pseudonym Rodney Montreal.
Ooh. Which
Rodney Montreal is a superb pseudonym.
It really is.
Rodney spelled with an H, moreover.
Where's the H at the end?
RHOD.
Oh.
Anyway.
Oh. Very sensual. Very, very strange.
And I feel like Rodney Montreal could have also been his pseudonym if he was in 9 Lives of a Wet Pussy.
Oh, absolutely. Anyway, so I mean, I guess that's kind of it. It's just kind of about this artist who is driven to madness both by his art and his place in the world, and
by the goddamn punk band next door.
Yeah, and he kills a bunch of people with a drill, although not as frequently as you would think. Basically, it feels there is a very kind of like misshapen, shoddy script that we're working with here. I think that's safe to say. If they even had a script.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I will make it clear, not my movie. Not a movie I vibed with, not a movie that I enjoyed watching once, and I've now watched it twice, so there you go. I will say in the movie's defense, reluctantly, even regretfully, I feel like a movie having a shoddy, misshapen script implies that it was an accident. And I feel like this movie is supposed to be... It's supposed to be. Like, I think that having a weird, ugly, nonsensical anti-plot is what the people making this movie thought would be, like, cool and transgressive.
Yeah, I think I feel that, and I think there are times that it is effectively off-kilter and just really throws you off of what you might expect from a movie, and most of the time it's not. Like, there are times where it is very clear what the movie is attempting to do and that it is failing. Like the ostensibly comic set piece where a woman is having him drill a peephole into a door and keeps changing her mind about where the hole should be. That is just a brutally unfunny scene that goes on for so long.
It really is, and I have seen this film described as a dark comedy, and I guess so.
I guess.
But I don't think I laughed at all.
No, I think it maybe wants to be. At least it wants to be a dark movie with comic relief. But the comic relief does not. It just does not work at all. But yeah, there's some stuff that I think is effectively off kilter. I think the opening sequence is very weird. It's very Argento. He's like kind of walking unsteadily into this like cherry red church, and there's this almost like goblin-esque theme going on the soundtrack, and it's a hell of a way to open a movie, and then none of it makes any sense or plays into the rest of the movie, and then that's just kind of a guide to what's going to happen next.
So that opening scene, I agree with you on 2 counts. One is that I think it is very visually striking, and I think that it is also, as you say, kind of very off-kilter and really almost confuses more than it clarifies as it gets started. I do think it's meant to set up what happens over the rest of the film, because if I recall correctly, isn't the church where they meet the vagrant who may be his father?
What? That's an element of this movie? I didn't get that at
isn't
all.
They see someone. He says some sort of line to the effect that he thinks that's his father. Or it reminds him of his father. Because there's some thread that you can tug on, if I recall, where it's possible he's killing vagrants specifically and not punks or art scenesters, because of his resentment of his bum dad.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That I did not get any of that. I mean,
And isn't it telling that the sense making happens days after you've watched the film and not when it's in front of you?
oh, very much. Well, because there are several reasons for that. The first is that the scene is structured so weirdly. Like, he approaches this guy as if he's a stranger and starts kind of yelling at him, and then it turns out that like he maybe went to the church on purpose to meet the guy because he found out he has a piece of paper in his pocket with his name on it, which we never see and never get confirmed and never know how he learned that or why he cares. And then he's just in a taxi with his girlfriend afterward, just saying the same line over and over and over and over and over again, which is basically how the script works. Yeah, I was thrown for a loop by that.
No, it's well, again, it sort of gets to that point I was driving at. This is a movie that is sloppy and crude and very inarticulate in certain ways. I think as a deliberate attempt to kind of kick over the cart of our bourgeois expectations of what movies be.
Yeah.
It's punk. It's punk.
It is.
Even though this movie also hates punks.
Yeah, it is, I suppose. Like, yeah, no. You're right. It does make sense.
I mean, and like, again, this doesn't work for me.
No.
Like, I just, I find this movie very irritating. In particular, very lo-fi movie. This movie has very muffled, fuzzy, echoey sound recording. Mm-hmm. And those who know my tastes know this. There is probably not a more surefire way for a movie to make me its enemy than to have less than pristine sound recording. And this movie is just like, it feels like it's rubbing the microphone up and down the sound recorder's taint. Like, it's just so scuffy sounding.
Yes, no, and I think that's accurate. And I think, I mean, that, does it service the vibe that the movie is going for? Maybe. It is a very just like, it is in a family of these like 70s movies that are very just like, they're very much about sweat and unbuttoned shirts with chest hair sticking out and just like really getting up in the grime of people's bodies.
Yeah, I know there was a movement in New York cinema and arts generally at this time called No Wave. And I was trying to figure out if Ferrara ever like publicly identified with the No Wave or if he was ever sort of grouped in with the No Wave filmmakers. And the answer seems to be question mark. Mm-hmm. But that's what No Wave is, right? It's like anti-art, anti-affect, just kind of like go out there and be filthy and be in your face and be sweaty and be fleshy and be all of these kinds of really crudely assembled, like raw, savage humanity, unfiltered.
Yeah. And I do think I think that helps it operate as something of a time capsule for that period. Certainly more of a seemingly authentic time capsule than Bucket of Blood, like their satire of the kind of beat generation.
I mean, I feel the difference there is that Bucket of Blood, it's coming from a place of far more overt hostility towards the scene it's depicting, but it's also its actors, right? Yep. Whereas this is the people who we see in the movie are the people that they are. Like, he's filming a punk band. He's not hired actors to be a punk band. Like, all of these, underground subculture types, those are the people Ferrara knew. These are his buddies who live in those subcultures, and he's filming them because that's what you do when you have like 6 cents to make a movie.
Yeah. And that can really work, and it also frequently doesn't. I mean, look at the incredibly strange creatures who stopped living and became mixed up zombies. That's got a similar, like, theater troupe, like, we're all in this together, we all just know each other and are doing this nonsense stuff. I think it is much more fun to watch that movie.
I was going to say, I would rather be in Ray Dennis Steckler's head than in Abel Ferrara's head.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's a big part of the difference in those two movies for me.
Yeah. I mean, Ray Dennis Steckler, he does not have an extended scene where we're just watching a punk band mill around before they go on stage while one guy screams, I want to see somebody's pussy over and over and over again. Which is...
It's probably Abel Ferrara would be my guess. I don't even know. He probably also didn't know the cameras were running.
I mean, probably. But I think it was Tony Coca-Cola. I think it was that character who was doing it.
I think I'm being an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
To Abel Ferrara, who I think deserves it and would be able to take it.
Yeah. If he listened to a podcast making fun of the Driller Killer and cried, he probably wouldn't be Abel Ferrara.
I will say this, in defense of Abel Ferrara, and to a certain extent in defense of this movie, it has a director's commentary, which I have not listened to, but I have listened to the best of the Abel Ferrara Driller Killer commentary YouTube video, and he seems to think this movie is stupid and silly, and he's so glad he got money for it because he didn't think it worked and doesn't understand why anybody would want to watch it.
That does put me on his side a little bit. But yeah, no, it's just like, it's this poisonously irritating thing to sit through any of the dialogue scenes. Pretty much anytime anyone speaks is just, it's nauseating.
Yeah, I will also say, based on that commentary, it sounds like the primary reason Ferrara made this movie was to give himself an excuse to constantly get to hang out with Carolyn Mars, who plays Carol, one of the two lesbian roommate lovers.
That
whatever that situation
makes
is.
a lot of sense. I do get the sense that at least in the late 1970s, his feelings toward women were complicated.
I think that they did not uncomplicate themselves at any point over the subsequent 50 years.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. But I've not gotten any further than 1984 with Mr. Ferrara, so I can't judge from my own experience. But let's talk about this movie as a slasher or a proto-slasher or whatever the fuck it is. Because it comes out in that weird period where Halloween has come out, but Friday the 13th hasn't really codified what the slasher is the 2 years after that. So we're in 79. That's the same year as the very weird proto-slashers When a Stranger Calls and Tourist Trap and stuff like that. And this feels very... I don't know. It feels even earlier than that to me. I don't know. What do you think?
It feels weird because it is... I guess we have to call it a horror film, right?
Yeah, I think it's...
Amongst its hats, it is wearing the horror film hat.
I think it is... I think I would say that's its primary genre, especially because it is trying to provoke a certain uneasy reaction in you pretty much the whole time, I think.
Because to me, it feels like the movie I want to line this up against is like Taxi Driver, more than that I want to line this up against like Halloween. I mean, it does have this... There is no story other than... There's no story here. It's basically just guy gets pissed off at his next door neighbors who are a loud punk band, takes a drill, kills people with the drill. So the mechanism of the narrative is guy drills a hole in other people's heads. So it has to be a slasher. I don't know where else you put that.
Yeah.
But the vibes are just not slasher film vibes. And I mean, there are no slasher film vibes in 1979 or 1977 when this went into production. Obviously, given the kind of film it is, no surprise it took ages and ages and ages to shoot. But you couldn't call the kill scenes an afterthought because a lot of tender, loving care is spent on a couple of them. Mm-hmm. But a lot of them do just feel like he gets through them as quickly as he possibly can. There's a lot of people who die in this movie. Very large body count, I think, for a proto-slasher of this period.
And especially considering how late in the game he actually busts out the drill.
Also that, yeah. It does take a while for this film's not a story to even become that. Like, before then, it's really just like a hanging out in a squalid apartment type movie. But so it does feel to me like if the reason you go see this, whether it's because it's 1979 and you just saw Halloween and you want more of that, or because it's 1985 or whatever year and you're a British teenager and you have crawled through the barbed wire and hidden in basements at night, and you have found this contraband VHS tape because you just want some filthy, disgusting slasher movie violence. I don't think that teenager feels satiated by this movie.
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, it probably felt like a window to like a totally alien culture, and that might have been interesting.
I will say, just imagine being, in general, watching this movie while English.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with that.
Like, this is such a New York movie. This is such an American indie movie. I mean, I barely feel like I can, like, parse the world that it's depicting. Mm. So, like... But yeah, so that's kind of my very, very inarticulate response to your question. What are your thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, obviously, this just wasn't happening yet. But I think something that you brought up, God, was it in our... It was either in our Sisters of Death episode or something last month. But you were talking about how one of the core elements of a slasher in your mind is like that kind of and then there were none aspect. Like you gather a bunch of people and they die one by one, essentially. And this is profoundly not that. Like, this is a spree killer movie where you're introduced to people as they die, for the most part. And that is something that I find that was also the case with Fear City and was kind of why I didn't like it that much. But I gotta say, it really does drive home the point that being murdered with a drill must be exquisitely, excruciatingly painful.
I mean, I buy that.
Yeah.
I would not want to be driller killed.
No, me neither.
Is what I can tell you.
In the scenes it spends the most time on, and I think there are probably at least 3 or 4 that pack this punch, you're just getting this like pulsing, sweating, shaking, like painful, awful reaction of the people who are being killed by this drill. And it's very provocative. It would probably, that's not what this movie is doing, but it'd probably be more interesting if these were characters we knew and cared about, and we were watching this horrible, grotesque fate being visited upon them.
And I think there's something to that, because like, to me, one of the most effective scenes in terms of conventional horror movie functioning in this movie is basically the last scene.
Oh yeah, that is a great scene.
Can we?
Yeah, let's do it.
So one of the 2 lesbians has decided to quit herself of this tawdry punk scene and has gone back to live with her husband, and they're just like hanging out at their home, and Reno comes in, kills the husband, stashes the body, and then hides in the couple's bed, and the woman, I believe it's Carol, gets out of the shower, and of course it's all very like peekaboo, lurid, whatnot, and then turns off the lights and crawls into bed and clearly thinks that it's her husband. It is in fact the driller killer, and she will presumably be drilled. And there's just something horribly... it just feels awful to be watching this, and you get this kind of sense of fatalism and doom, and it just, to me, feels really upsetting in a way that the film has not previously felt upsetting. So I think there's something to that. Like, if the characters who have been established, such as they are, were the victims of the drill more often, I think there might be a lot of just real dark emotions to this movie. I mean, there are dark emotions to it, but I don't think they work. I think they would work in that case.
Yes, absolutely. And that scene is so powerfully done. Like, it plays out over complete darkness, and you just hear her talking to what she believes to be her boyfriend, and you're just like waiting for her to find out, and you never get that. It cuts off before it happens, and it leaves you on that, like, well, not a cliffhanger, but on that promise that this will continue in some sort of horrible way. And yeah, that's really satisfying for the one scene. Yeah, for the most part, like, the kills, some of them are very perfunctory, but a lot of them are just like really gross and painful and in your face. And I think that's the point. Those are the points where the aesthetic of what the movie has been doing the whole time does kind of effectively careen into horror. I think it is supporting the kills very well in a way that doesn't support any of the dialogue or characters.
And, something that occurs to me in this moment, the kill scenes have the best acting in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, as you say, I feel the pain, I hear the terror, and these are from actors who have otherwise, like, barely been able to articulate lines. So my only assumption is that Abel Ferrara was actually killing vagrants, and this is a documentary and not staged footage.
Yeah, I would have to agree. That seems like the only case. But yeah, because let me tell you, the people who are asked to act are not. It's not happening.
Oh man, who do you think gives the worst performance in this movie of all the like actual characters?
God, I think there's like a blonde lady who's with the Roosters. I think she's really bad. Tony Coca-Cola, like high on probably coke, begging for his portrait is a pretty rough scene too. But
that specific scene, I think, has the worst acting, but I think on the whole, his performance is better than that scene.
I agree. I don't know. So I think I'm going to stick with the blonde lady because that was rough for me.
The blonde lady is a good choice. The blonde lady is a definitely good choice. I think it is not a film that has too many good performances to choose from, or indeed any.
No, I wouldn't say so. But do you have your own worst, or do you agree?
I actually think I would agree with you straight down the line. I think the blonde lady is the worst. Although, as I said, I do think Tony Coca-Cola in that one particular scene is certainly to me the most annoying scene in the movie. And it is not a movie devoid of annoying scenes, but that one in particular, I'm just like, why is this scene 4,000 hours long?
Yeah. There are a lot of scenes where you're like, is this bad acting? Or it's kind of like, is this a bad actor pretending to be a high person, or is this just a high person who is just really sloppy? And it's very hard to tell.
It is. It absolutely is.
So
I mean, hey, if that's your kind of movie, this is the movie for you.
Yeah, and it clearly is some people's kind of movie. And I vibed with it a little more than you did. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I edged it right over into like, okay, you're doing something. But it's one of those movies that I respect a little more than I want to watch or actually admire or like enjoy.
And I agree with that. Like, I mean, I certainly, my respect did not shade into a star rating. I gave this film 4 out of 10 back in the early days when I did this as part of my first Summer of Blood dedicated to the slasher movies. That would have been in 2010, or the video nasties rather. And I gave it 4 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 when I just watched it now. So staying constant with my rating here. I know why the movie's doing what it's doing, and I don't think it's doing it wrong. I just don't believe in the mission.
Yeah.
I guess is sort of where I'm at with this movie.
And
I have very little patience for the like whole American indie no-fi movement that sort of like starts with Warhol and ends kind of in the early 80s. I just find it real tedious, and watching a bunch of people making home movies of all their friends in New York being stoned or whatnot, it's just not a scene I care about, is really what it comes down to. And so when a movie's kind of about the scene the way that something like this is, I'm just like, I'm not interested.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. It's not my vibe. There's a thing of like, you can argue that incoherence is the aesthetic as much as you want, but there's a lot of genuine incompetence also going on. Like it is there's no way to separate those two things fully and parse what is on purpose and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just like to me, the incompetence trumps the aesthetic in this case. It wins over in terms of like me actually liking it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, if everything else this movie was doing was something I was on board with, I would still have huge problems with the sound recording.
Oh yeah. And that's not. Yeah, we talked about that, but like, and also just like narratively, obviously the narrative is a dysfunctional mess, but also like the very basic broad strokes that it's delivering at its core are just not delivered very well. You don't really get a sense of what Reno Miller is actually like, or what he's thinking, or what his motivations are. And it kind of plays out like a poorly crafted prequel to a movie you already know about. Like there's this weird scene where they're watching a television commercial for like a portable battery that you can, guess what, attach a drill to. But we don't get a sense that he should be clicking into that commercial for any reason at that point, because he hasn't decided to bring a drill outside of the house and kill people with it. So it's just like, it kind of reads like, I bet you were wondering how he got this battery, and it's really strange.
That's great.
Yeah, it's very Solo, a Star Wars story, but it's a movie that's not a prequel to anything. It's just itself.
Right. I mean, I appreciate that on that one particular point, Ferrara was very concerned that we would think that's a plot hole. Where did he get his portable battery from?
Yeah, because we see him
wanted to set it up.
We see him watch the commercial, and we see him go to the hardware store, I believe twice. He sees it in the window at the hardware store, and then he goes to buy it later, I think.
It's like the hat in Nochka.
Yeah, it's... We're really, really concerned about this portable battery, which is very funny because we just have portable drills now. So it was not a shock to me that he could bring a drill outside.
I mean, that is part of the joy of this in terms of being a time capsule. Like, I had the exact same thought of like, imagine how much easier it would be to be a driller killer in 2024 or even in like 1993.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, he really had to put in the work to be a driller killer. And I guess you got to respect that.
Exactly. But no, so I do like that aspect about it, that sort of window into a period of time that is gone. Not just for its like sort of punk in the pre-Giuliani 70s, but also, again, things like that.
Yeah.
Things like weird cultural detritus. I don't think it's a valueless film.
No, certainly not.
I don't enjoy it. I don't want to see it a third time. I hope to God no force in this universe causes me to do so. But like, I don't think it is a valueless film.
Yeah, I completely agree. But speaking of other forms of value, do you think it is genuinely nasty as a video nasty? Do you feel like it lives up in any way to the promise? I know obviously you kind of mentioned a little bit like your impression of British people watching it. But
I think it is a nasty film. I think it comes from a dark, ugly place in humanity. But I don't think its nastiness... It's not that kind of nasty, right? Like
it's mean.
It makes me feel... It's mean. Yeah, it's a mean movie. But in terms of its, like, gore effects... They're persuasive because the screaming makes them persuasive. They're persuasive because they're just generally kind of shoddy cinematography compensates, I think, for a lot of the limitations of the makeup, but they look fake.
Yeah.
It looks fake as hell. There's very little gore, right? Like, people die horribly with a drill, but in terms of, like, we see blood oozing and we see the drill entering flesh, there's not actually a lot of that because that costs money and money they don't have. So I don't think it's a terribly nasty movie. I think, again, it has a very rude cover. And we know that that's why the DPP was like, this is the one.
Yeah.
This is the one we're going to use to build upon this rock we will found our video nasties list. But I think the movie itself is more... That's not the reason the movie is unpleasant, is its violence.
I totally hear you. But just in terms of the ones you've seen, is there at least a video nasty that you think of as like kind of a number one and just in pure like almost being worthy of censored nastiness?
I would probably have to live with the list for a little bit. I definitely, as I was reviewing video nasties, I was giving them scores out of 5 or 6 technically, because I do think I gave a 0 on that scale. And anything that had a 5 was like, oh, actually, I get their point. I would have also banned this film. And I would say some of the cannibal films, I think, would for sure get us to that level. I know I gave at least 1 5 when I was doing my video nasty binge many, many years ago. I don't remember what the 5 was for, but I do think for sure, and there's several cannibal films on the list, I think at least one, if not more, of the cannibal films would cross that threshold.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if you're really wanting to get into just like the pure nastiness, you got that. You've got a couple of rape revenge films on there. You've got like I Spit on Your Grave and The Last House on the Left, and it's like that shit is just vile. And that makes sense. But at least of the like slashery ones that are most my area of expertise, I think the one that I think of the most is Anthropophagus, the Joe D'Amato movie.
Oh, that's definitely nastier than this.
Oh, for sure. That is just a wallow in filth and gore, and I quite like Anthropophagus.
You were kind of trying to agitate to get that on our list of candidates, and I think what it came down to is like it was going to be hard enough for me to rewatch it, but then rewatch it and discuss it with somebody who enjoys the experience of watching it was just more than my heart was going to be able to take.
Yeah, no, that's fair. We all have our peccadillos. Anyway, anything else about the Driller Killer while we're here?
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah,
I think I covered it.
We covered it. It's fucking annoying, man. I do like. Yep.
It's given that this comes out of the punk subculture, like these are people he knows. I assume that all the punks in this film are his colleagues and neighbors, if not necessarily his friends. He's interested in that subculture, but boy, he hates that band.
Oh yeah,
like this is not a movie.
We do too.
This is not a movie where we're like, oh, wow, Reno's being such a prick. Like, actually, the Roosters are super good. It's like the Roosters are the worst punk band in the history of the art form. Like, they should be thrown off a bridge. And that's the movie's, like, vibe. Like, I don't feel like this is something I feel because I don't like the music. I feel the movie wants us to have that response.
Oh, absolutely. But yeah, when I called you man just now, I did remember how he calls his girlfriend man, and that's pretty fun.
It's fun.
He's like, you can't leave, man. It's just so 70s. It's very shaggy.
It's so 70s. I dig
yeah?
it. I dig it.
Well, question. How excited would you be to watch Miss 45? Like, is that something you would kind of approach with dread?
Miss 45 is the one Ferrara film that I would like to see.
Yeah.
I actually just had a letterbox conversation on this exact point. I should see Bad Lieutenant and King of New York. I would like to see Miss 45.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like a shared universe because I think that's a silly thing to say, but I think there is the
AFCU.
Oh my goodness, we should all be so lucky. But there's a part where one of the girls that Reno lives with is like reading from a newspaper about these crimes. They're kind of talking about urban legends and crimes and stuff. And I think she mentioned someone who goes around like shooting people with the 45, which I think is like kind of a call forward to Miss 45.
Could be that he wrote that line and he had a like sort of vision in his head, like this is the person whose story I need to tell next, because it was his very next film.
Yeah, and actually I think she mentioned a nun too. I think it is fully connected to Miss 45 in some strange way.
That's amazing.
Anyway, yeah, I want to see that. I want to see all the Body Snatchers ones that I haven't seen, including his.
his is not the worst adaptation of that book.
What do you think is the worst? Is it Invasion with Daniel Craig?
The Invasion, yes, with Daniel Craig and Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, fair enough. I've seen the 50s one, and I've seen that one. I haven't even seen the Donald Sutherland one, which I need to get to.
I personally like the 50s one better than the Donald Sutherland one, although I think that is definitely a minority opinion.
I think I will be in the exact same boat because I love the 50s one, but I like that concept, so I've been meaning to kind of catch up.
And you have such a ready-made excuse to catch up with it.
I do. R.I.P. Donald Sutherland.
R.I.P.
I guess our Buffy episode will have to live on as a tribute to
Oh.
I mean, honestly, it's kind of hardcore of him to look at Joss Whedon's script and go, I'm not doing this. Anyway, I think that's going to be that on the Driller Killer. But yes, thank you so much for listening, everybody. You can find more of this show and everything else at alternateending.com. In 2 weeks, we will be returning with another video nasty. We are going to be discussing the marijuana grower crop dust zombie 1980 movie Toxic Zombies, also known as Forest of Fear, also known as Blood Eaters, which neither of us have seen.
I believe Forest of Fear was the title it was banned under, but yes, one of those movies with like 7 titles.
Oh yeah, which you know it's gonna be good if it's a non-Italian movie that has that many titles. But yeah, that is one that I'm certain I've literally heard of it in terms of like I've read the Video Nasties list before and my eyes have skimmed past those words, but when we were looking into the research, I was like, I have no idea what this movie is. So I'm curious to see what the fuck it is, and I'm sure it will be boring and bad, but who knows?
At least like 2 of the nasties are not boring and bad.
Yeah. Like Anthropophagus.
I mean, it's not boring.
That's true. Anyway, that's goodbye everyone. Bye.
Bye.